Alafia, greetings and hotep. Welcome, welcome to Oracle Divination Network. You're in the network, and this is the place to be. You got your Omi Inca 7 Live coming at you, bringing you a broadcast this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you haven't read our advertisement, go out and read it. We're talking about schools should be, or they should not be, a pipeline to prison. And I've consulted one of the best of our on that. As an advocate, there was a pathway into the penal institution directly through the special education department. And we're going to get into it this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And for those of you who are teachers or who have a stake in the educational society and you are stakeholders, you need to tune in and you need to call and voice your opinion, because we're looking at doing an overhaul in the special education system. We know it is not equal. We know it's separate and unequal. And the special education department was created to offer separate and equal, but it's just the opposite. Most of our special education students who are across the nation are being suspended at a much higher rate than any other regular ed student. And not to mention, minorities are suspended more frequently. Not to mention that these students are being pulled out of their neighborhood who have differentiated learning and they're sent to other locations. And that is a disadvantage. And another thing is a disadvantage. The students are not able, who are special ed diagnosed, are not able to participate in extracurricular activities after school either. They can't be a part of the Glee Club or the basketball team or any club for that matter. They are usually bused back to their community. So they're separated from all the other children. Does that sound like a segregation problem to you? When they decided to create special ed to allow Black children to enter into white schools, now they're continuing to segregate them in the school, and they are giving them a far higher statistics of suspension. Most special ed students who are diagnosed are not expelled, but across the nation, special ed students are being put back into the mainstream without able to, well, they're not connecting with their peers, and they're getting more harsher treatment than the regular ed students when they are in trouble. They're usually expelled and suspended more frequently. And in particular, Black boys are suspended more. Now, we have a serious problem. We have unequal statuses in the school system, and the education in and of itself is tainted because they're not given a degree that's equal to the regular ed students that will allow them to go off to college. They're given an inferior piece of paper that is not equivalent to a diploma. And we're going to get into that in a second, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have your listening hats on. Hope you have your questions and right into that topic. And we're going to talk about it because we know that it could be devastation identification. Ooh, excuse me. Excuse me. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us back here at our station at Oracle Divination Network. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today. And our topic today, should schools be a pipeline to prison? And that is the topic we're talking about. Now, let me offer a disclaimer, both for the Center for Public Representation. They have advised you that they are not an attorney and they do not give legal advice. And if you are seeking legal advice, you need to go and find an attorney. And I am saying that I'm offering a disclaimer that I'm not an attorney. I am not representing anyone here. I do is that we are in the process towards getting people being of it where if there's issues such as bills that are being passed, and there are a number of bills that are being currently passed that you can get behind right now and enforce your opinion about the laws. And in just a second, I'm going to tell you some of the laws that they are looking at. And these are civil rights laws. They fall up under civil rights. The advocate normally works with the disabled client. If there's a child or an adult up to age 22 or an adult that needs help filing their SSI claim or their disability claim, we can assist those particular individuals in filing their claim. Now, the Center for Representation, they do practice law, and you have to ascertain them. And they're a non-for-profit organization, and they work with disabled family members to assist them in acquiring their disability, a disability, either SSI or SSA. So that center has been around for over 40 years. They've been doing great work in the community. They act as like a pro bono with low costs also to service the community. They're a non-for-profit agency. And I'm going to be, matter of fact, I receive their catalog, and they have a number of materials that they sell. They're a unique organization in that they're a legal department and that they're an educational department, and they do sell their materials and their training materials to help people to become guardian ad litem, to help people to become advocates and ombudsmen who are working with families who have disability. Now, I like to say for the record, I have been an advocate for over 40 years for special needs families of children with disability. And I have actually gone into the school system and been a mediator for these family members who are trying to get their civil rights activated when a child may have been suspended, expelled, and oftentimes, too often, a number of special ed children who are minority as a parent advocate when they go into their mediations, arbitrations, and due process hearing. And I'm talking to you again about it now because there's a couple laws out there that are on the books that are dealing with the money follows the client when they are moved. We have a problem where there's limited housing for these special needs individual who lives in government housing. There's a limitation of the houses, and there's not enough homes that are available for disabled people to transition into. And there are a number of laws that are out there, and you can get behind the laws. Go to www.publicrepresentation.com and look at what they're advocating for and get behind it and volunteer, because we need advocates. We need advocates that are actually going to help these mothers and fathers who are struggling with their disabled child. As you know, it's hard enough for a regular ed student to stay out of trouble and to avoid being suspended. But now we're finding that special needs children are being suspended and expelled more frequently, and in particularly Black boys are being expelled even at a higher rate. Now, we have some problems that are going on in our school system, and we've got to get behind our teachers and our departments and help. We've got to get behind them. Now, when you decide to become an advocate, as I had talked to you about, you can actually become an expert at working with families with disability and differentiated learning styles, and that you can get training. And Design for Change actually was an agency that trained me out of Chicago. And there are various different PIs in every state that you can find. You can look up Parent Information Center, and you can find in your geographical area where there may be a PTI available for you to get training as a surrogate advocate. And in some places, I know Indiana was actually bringing in volunteers to train, and they were paid for their services for that training class. Now, I'm not certain if they're still doing the actual monetary payment for the training, but once you do train, you want to go to the classes, you want to participate in all of the up-to-date laws, because you have to stay up to date on the laws because they're constantly changing. Now, what I do want to tell you is that special ed is not what it used to be. The children that are special ed are not able to rub shoulders with their peers. They're usually yanked out and brought into a separate class. And that in of itself, children. And not to mention after school, when children are dying to activities. When you wanted your son, the wrestling team, you have to find somewhere to put them after school. It's a bit of an inconvenience, I would say. But primarily, we have a situation where we don't have equal. Now, let's get back to this pipe. Dumb down the curriculum. They don't have Core 40, and they're sitting in the classroom putting puzzles together, or doing some paintings and drawings, and they're not being challenged. Then when they do decide to engraft them, the general population, they're behind because they're missing their math and their science classes that they're not in. So now they have to play catch up if they want to graduate with the mainstream. Otherwise, they'll have to graduate with the special ed class, and that is to receive just a certificate of completion and not a diploma. Can you imagine that, people? After having your child in school 16 years, he comes out with a piece of paper of completion, his time and wasted. So what we're talking about is that this pipeline is taking a lot of young brothers who have gotten suspended, might be for truancy, tardiness, and it might not even be for getting in any trouble, but because the mom can't get the child there in time. After you get too many truancies and tardies, you're expelled. And when you're expelled, you go home. and you have a homeschool teacher to come and assist you. But they're always backlogged, waiting for a homeschool teacher to become available. And this is the problem that we're running into. So children go home, they have no tutorials, they have to wait for the material, they have no tutor. What I want to say is that we've got to get our act together, teachers, administrators, because you're sending children home that are falling through the cracks and they're having a higher dropout because of the inconsistency. Now, why not keep them in the classroom and bring the special ed teacher to the classroom and have her work with all of the children who are having difficulty, so you don't have to single out any special ed student? But nevertheless, every year it's a new program, people. I don't know what program they're following this year, but every year it's a new program, and you have to get adjusted to it every year. So you have young children that are really losing momentum and they are not interested in school, so they're being pushed out in effect. So what happens when they get in trouble and a fight breaks out? If a security guard usually takes them over to charged and booked, and especially if they're of age of 16, 17, then they are, the mothers might be called, they might be given one phone call, but some of those children are usually charged. And if they are charged, we can have a problem of oversaturation of young people going into prison, into juvenile detention. Now, why can't the schools maintain the children and keep them in the building and not outside of the building where they're roaming around to get in trouble? Well, our schools have got to do a better job of what they're doing, because they're part of the problem. Why would you segregate children in a school building, put them off in a corner in the basement where the buildings are usually dilapidated and not up to par? That's unequal. And that was the real reason why we fought the civil rights, to get separate and equal, not unequal. Now you have a problem of segregating and displacing these special needs children, so they're not given the same equal education as a normal core 40 would be receiving. So I'm saying to those teachers, you've got to get on the ball and you've got to say, hey, look, we are not giving these children the proper service. I know when I was in the classroom, I had to do some jumping up and down and yelling, because children are supposed to receive therapy who are in the special ed program. I am not a therapist, and a regular ed teacher does not start doing the work of a therapist in a classroom full of at least 25 children. That special ed teacher is scheduled to come in. She's supposed to come in and offer her therapeutic care to that child. That child is out of order, cannot perform in a daily classroom in regular ed. They need their therapy. So if you don't give them their therapy, they're going to act out, and consequently they get in trouble and have to be sent to the office. It's a ricocheting effect, I know, but 9 times out of 10, we do not want separate and unequal in the classroom. That's what the wars were fought over for in the civil rights movement, because special education law is a part of the civil rights. 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment is where it came out of. Now, you have a number of laws. You have the IDEA law, the 94-142. You have the school code regulation, and you have the 504. You have a number of laws that parent must become acquainted with, because they're the parent. The parent is the child's first advocate and the first teacher. So the parent role models good advocacy for the child. So the child will eventually learn to self-advocate for himself. And if you're an advocate and you're working with a parent, you don't do all the work. You train the parent how to self-advocate for the child. Now, where you would see most of the advocacy work done at would be at any expulsion, going with the mother and the father and the child to the M-team meeting when you're discussing the child being back enrolled in school, or you're discussing how many days is he going to get for suspension, then you have to read the regulation. It might not be any days. They might be immune and waived from any out of school suspension. So you have to know the laws. But nevertheless, if mother doesn't know the laws, then Jenny can get sent home without any extra curriculum work and without any opportunity to network after school with any programs. So you are left at home, mom, to raise him and to be his teacher. And that's unfair because the regulations state that they would assist you and aid you. And sometimes it's a little misunderstanding, I know, but they're still suspending children way too frequently, and special ed children are getting it the hardest. And African American boys are getting it even more harder than the whole district. Now, we have a serious problem, Houston, and we need to address it. And we can't go around here talking about, well, it's not my problem. Mother just didn't raise the child right. So many teachers want to put the problem off on the parent, but it's not always the parent's fault. It could truly be the fault of the districts because they have faulty regulation that they don't enforce. Some of you teachers are trying to push Johnny off into special ed because you don't want him asking questions. You don't want him slowing down the class. Well, that's what you're there for. You're supposed to be able to adapt that child's curriculum, any child's curriculum that is not able to keep up with the standard curriculum. That is why you went to school, to learn how to adapt curriculum and not have to jump up and down and scream for the special ed person to come in and do all the adaptation. Now, some districts allow the children to stay in the classroom and they send the special ed teacher in. And the special ed teacher then begins to work with the child one-on-one. And some districts pull the child out and send the child to the special ed room off in the corner downstairs in the basement. Hold tight, ladies and gentlemen. Hold tight. We are going to go hold tight, ladies and gentlemen. We're on our station identification, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be broadcasting with you in approximately 3 seconds. Back on the line again. We want to give the audience a break and we want to give out those numbers. Those digits are 760-539-3247. You can call into the line, ladies and gentlemen, and you can talk to me in person and you can ask your questions. So please do call in, mothers, if you have questions that you would like to ask. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and we're back and live in the case, in the showroom here. And we are beckoning you to give us a call. That number is 760-539-3247. You can call in with your questions. And I think we have a caller on the line here. We're going to answer the question here. Hello, caller number 224. Can I say who's calling, please? Hello, caller number 224. Would you like to say something? We've taken you off hold, and you're on the Oracle Divination Network show. What would you like to ask the question on? Are you just listening? Okay, when you feel like you want to say something, just let me know and we'll bring you right into our broadcasting station. I am Omiinka 7 and I am broadcasting live here on Oracle Divination Network. And I'm also broadcasting on my YouTube channel. And we are getting ready to celebrate our 10th anniversary during the month of May 19th, I think it is. That whole month, we're going to be celebrating our 10th anniversary on the Blog Talk radio station. And they have been so obliging to us. We have gathered many followers on our show. We have featured special artists who are actually publishers, and we've actually featured their book and the history behind their writing. And we've gone from paranormal, we're actually a part of the paranormal, where we really talk about anything paranormal. As you know, we are with the Yoruba, and the Yoruba Ifa tribes deals with the paranormal. We actually talk about clairvoyant things. We also talk about oracle divination readings. And we've had a Babalaw on who actually displayed what the process was for having an oracle reading. We're going to start encouraging mothers to have their children destinations read for their life, and also for the young men to have the right hand of Ifa that will give them direction for their life. And we are about the business of trying to work with families, and we include everything from school to college, and working with the parent who have differentiated learners in their household or special needs children. We want to be of service to the general community who have children that are special population. If you have a child that's a special population and you have a question about getting that child signed up for services, if you want to know if you should put that child in a private school, we are not attorneys here. We cannot advise you. We can only give you information. You must make your own decision. As I indicated early, we have the CPR in the Center for Aging. So one of the areas I do specialize in is working with the families to acquire their Social Security disability and showing them the proper documentations that they need in order to apply under a reconsideration, or if it's their first initial time. For those children who are applying for disability benefit, we really are putting up our antennas to say that we want to make sure that this is a clear case of disability, and it's not a situation where mother is trying to get an SSI check. And I do not readily file for any child when the mother is pushing for this child to get a label. We don't want to put unnecessary labels on children. We only want to identify those children that are a true learning disability. As you know, ADHD and with hyperactivity and without it is not classified as a learning disability, but it falls under. So more than likely, the district is going to offer you 504, which is basically services and not monetary gain. Now, they've made quite a few changes lately. People have pushed the Social Security to the brim of forcing them to give aid for these disabled. And I am warning somebody out there today who might be pushing their child to acquire a label just so he can get a disability check. That's fraudulent. And that is an act that you can be prosecuted for. So you certainly don't want to pick up a habit of having each and every one of your children diagnosed with a label on them just so that you can get a check. Now, the medication that's involved is also examined in that child. If they find that you're not giving the child the medicine regularly, and you've gone through the trouble pushing that child to become diagnosed with a learning disability, then you certainly have to follow the guidelines. And parents, I want you to understand that Your children don't have to be pushed off into other neighborhoods. If you find that if there's no special ed room or no space for your special ed child, and now they want to send you off in other directions and these miles surpass all of your regulation, you have to look at the mileage and see just how far they can relocate that child, because it might be against the law in some regulation. Now, I cannot advise you on this, but I can tell you to read your regulation and see if you have a limited number of miles that you have to agree to relocate your child to. But a lot of children are being pulled out of their district and placed in other foreign districts away from their friends and their counterpart. And then they're isolated in that building and they're not with the general population. This can pose a serious problem where the child becomes very, very uninvolved and low self-esteem to the point where they want to drop out. I've seen many young children who could have stayed in the school system, but they got fed up with the bureaucracy. But we are trained to cut through the bureaucracy, to help the parent learn to be the best advocate for the child. We teach the parent how to self-advocate for her child, and teach the child as he becomes an adult over the age of 16. We teach that child how to self-advocate for himself, so that when he goes into the M team meeting and he has to create an IEP, then he knows exactly what he wants his goals to be. And mothers, don't accept a boilerplate IEP. Don't just say, I will accept this IEP and I am going to live with it. You must make a unique IEP that is for the specification and branding of your child, not one that someone has made up. And do not go into the meetings without somebody on your shoulder that can assist and aid you, okay? Because when you go into those meetings, you must remember people are trained and they know buzzwords that you don't know. You might need to have an advocate with you. And these advocates, sometimes their names are listed on the front desk or card. If they go to due process hearing and they prevail, they can contact the state to ask the state to accommodate them and paying that advocate for their assistance. Now, that's not in all states, some states, but it's very vital that you know your rights, parents, and that you get the handbook from your district and that you're giving that handbook upon your child enrolling in that school district. If you don't have a handbook, then certainly go in and ask for one so you know all the regulations and the rules. I can't begin to impress upon you as much that you should go to a support team. Going to the support teams will help you to get familiar with all of the bureaucracy, the procedures, the workshops, the seminars, the symposiums that they offer for the parent. There are tons of symposiums. And parent, guess what? You're the expert. When you gain all this knowledge, then there is a Title H where you can also petition and being paid for it. Advocates do get paid. They're not all volunteers, but we do take volunteer cases on a needs basis. So it's like a pro bono. But nevertheless, a lot of parents are so astute and well trained. They know all the laws, and sometimes they're more proficient than their attorneys are, because they've studied the laws for years and years. And there are some attorneys that go to college and specialize in this, but most of them generally acquire the skill after they've gotten out of college. They then get the laws and regulation. And here's what parents need to know, that you have a right to your child, but you make sure that that IEP is being evaluated and is being revisited so that you can put in specifically the goals that you want for your child. Now, I am not here to advise you. I'm not an attorney, so I could not represent you in a court of law as an attorney, but I can come as your support as an advocate. And that's what we call ourselves when we are not a member of the bar. Being a member of the bar would mean that you've gone to college and you passed the bar. Okay? Now, I want to say for the record that We are looking at too many juveniles from getting in trouble through a fight or complication or a scuffle in school. We don't have the taxpayers don't have that kind of money to house young men and juvenile delinquent who could be merely chastised, put on house arrest, and sent home. So why are they going into the prison system? Is this a pipeline to school, or pipeline to prison? What is the purpose of doing that? Boys fight all the time, taking away their livelihood at a juvenile stage. We got far too many offenses that could be dealt with differently. And it used to be the principal steps in and he suspends, continue to do their work. And you can continue to keep them off the streets. So we are serving our families. That's when all of the trouble starts and the child gets out in the street and violates some law. Now he's treated as an adult and he's placed in the prison institute. We've got to look at what can we do to change the methods and the procedures that our schools are using, because we have far too many people that are just being placed into the prisons, and it's a pipeline, school to pipeline. Hold tight. Let me see how my visitor is doing here. See if my visitor wants to say something. Hello, caller number 224. Would you like to say something? You're on the line with Omiinka 7. And can I say what your name is? Would you like to speak? Okay, I would imagine that you're quiet, all by yourself, sitting there. That's not a problem. We're not going to make a fuss with you. We're going to allow you to sit there and enjoy yourself and understand that we are just trying to make you comfortable. Hold tight. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me on this afternoon. You've got Oracle Divination Network coming to you live here in my studio. I am your illustrious host, Omiinka 7, bringing you a topic that is well overdue. Should schools be a pipeline to prison? I don't think so, ladies and gentlemen, but unfortunately, we have this going on. It's a bit of a problem. I'd like to offer a disclaimer. I'm not an attorney nor a member of the bar. I cannot offer you any advice. And based on our residence specialist here, the gentleman, the company I told you, the CPR, who actually deals with representation for consumers and helping them to get their SSI and to formalize their paperwork and to allow them to ascertain their disability, SSI or SSA. And that organization has been around for over 40 years, and they're abbreviated as the CPR. And the CPR is the Center for Public Representation and is located out of Madison, Wisconsin, is one of their offices. And they're a unique organization. The Center for Public Representation is a unique non-for-profit corporation and a combination of law firm, training center, watchdog, and publishing house dedicated to speaking up for unrepresented individuals. Isn't that grand, ladies and gentlemen? And I often have donated several hours for the Center for Aging and Long-Term Care for the people who could not speak up for themselves. For 3 years, I volunteered for them and under elder care law to represent them in their disability cases and to assist them in gathering the fact-finding information for their reconsideration appeal. So I've been well trained in that area of working with disability benefits and offering as much free service pro bono as I can give to those elderly and seniors. And I did assist parents and aid them and in assisting them in applying for their children's disability when they had disabled children. Now, we weren't talking about mothers who saw a check in the eyes of the psychiatrist and they wanted to immediately deem their child disabled. So they then got their child all ready for testing and found out the child did not test well for disability, for learning disability, but they may have had a diagnosis from a doctor that would deem them under other health impaired, which could get them service under 504. Now you have to horn up and go out and read up on all the regulations because this is not where all the bills and all of the laws that a whole week. Now we do have training materials. We have trained with the states, and we have actually brought in people from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and various parts of Chicago. And we've trained these women, and we've actually developed a TV ready show that will show you how to start from beginning to end as to how to make yourself familiar with all of the regulations, the laws, and then to get involved in how to manipulate through the bureaucracy of your school district. It's a whole training system, over 5 days worth of training that is now going to be able to advocate for your child or how to advocate for else as a surrogate advocate. So we've been doing advocacy work for over 40 years, and I've trained with Design for Change out of a district here in Indiana, and it's called InSource. I've trained with them as well. So they're obliging to offer you the training. My training was a foundation of a paralegal, of course, and I chose to go into the specialty area of educational law. So it allowed me to open up and be able to research the laws and case laws on these cases that families have had. Families actually do go to a courtroom in the school and they do mediation and they work on trying to resolve the problem. If it's an suspension problem, an expulsion problem, they try to resolve it at the mediation level in order to avoid from having to do due process. If the mediator cannot gather facts and get people to agree to disagree, then it goes on to an arbitrator. And the arbitrator can come in and make recommendation and gather facts and give them the finalization in order to avoid from going to due process hearing. Due process hearing is the ultimate level that most districts want to avoid from going to. Now, one of the things I will say is that Black boys right now currently have the problem of becoming the new bald eagle, because a lot of those special needs children that are boys, that are male genders, are getting suspended more frequently than anybody else in the whole district. I have written about the Black boys in my research and talked about the statistics and the history that actually bears me out on this, that there are way too many Black boys being put in special ed who are being inappropriately diagnosed. And a lot of what they are seeing is a deficit in their language. And because they don't come to school with 500 or more words, 5,000 or more words, then they classify them as a learning disabled, when in fact it is a language barrier that can be resolved right in the classroom. And you don't have to put a label on. You can send that child to an ELL program within your building that will aid and assist you in properly bringing that young person up to the Orthodox English, who might be from another country. There are lots of regulations in the LLC that are just like special ed. It's another whole governing body altogether. And most special ed teachers don't have the ELL background unless they're teaching kindergarten. The state of Indiana has mandated that kindergarten teachers go and get the ELL endorsement so they can learn about language barriers and stop inappropriately misplacing Black children into special ed when it's a language barrier. So that can be resolved when you get more teachers that are trained to diagnose and assess children for language disorders rather than having a learning disability. A language disorder is not like a learning disability. It doesn't say that the child with a language disability can't learn. It says that they are not familiar with the Orthodox language and must be trained and must be tutelage. It's very vital that we should get a better understanding of that. And our phone lines are now open, ladies and gentlemen. And our phone number is 760-539-3247. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to invite you to our ribbon ceremony, which is going to be May 19th, but we'll be celebrating the whole month of May. We will be sending out advertisements to let you know about our celebration. We're going to have an open house to invite you in. We're not certain as to who's going to be on the mic that day, but we will have somebody very special on the itinerary. And we definitely want all of our followers to be there. The followers that have followed me consistently for the past 10 years, we certainly want you to be there so we can single you out and call your names. We want new followers, so why don't you go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and then come back and subscribe to Blog Talk radio station and become a subscriber. Tell a friend about OMI. Tell them about the work that I do, and bring them along and have them to subscribe also to my Blog Talk channel as well as my YouTube. If you see a little bell down below, why don't you ring that bell and subscribe? And as you subscribe, you'll be notified as to when I'm on the air, so you can come over and listen to what I have to say. Thank you for allowing me to be myself again on this radio station. For over 10 years, you've graced me with the ability to be myself. Thank you so much for allowing me to be unique as I am and being able to be in the paranormal category. We are a paranormal station. We do believe in the spirit, and we do worship in mind, body, soul, and spirit. And we are a part of the paranormal because we believe in our ancestors. And we always invite our ancestors in to be a part of what we're doing. I like to invite the ancestors in today that they may govern and abide by whatever rule is necessary here in this setting, and that they may bring that melanin connection that we can reconnect to the greater circle. I thank you so much for allowing me to be able to come before you today and to talk to you about all of these things we have to talk about. We have so much to talk about when it comes to our schools failing, and the schools want to put it off on the parent. I'm not going to let them do it this time. We have some very, very supportive parents who are hard workers, who come in the classroom, who support the teacher, who works with the teacher, who volunteers to be a chaperone and go on field trips. So we know some of the mothers are going 101% above their required duty. And we know that some of the teachers are doing the same thing, but we always have one bad, rotten apple in the bunch. And what we want to do is address who has laid out this school to Pipeline, who has initiated it. Well, in my book, if you read my book, you'll find out. I spent over 10 years researching the conspiracy that Dr. Jawanza Jufu alleged was going on. I was so interested in finding out who are these conspirators that want children or that want Black boys to fail. Who are they, Dr. Jawanza Jufu? He said, you tell me. So that's what started the ball rolling. I started to submit my statement. Hypothesis was that the females were part of the conspiracy, the effects that females have on African American males coupled with their culture. And I felt that they did not have a good concept of the Black boy's academics and his ability to heed. As a matter of fact, the statistics have showed that the female teacher gave the Black male less time to respond. And that's all in my book as well, indicating that she didn't wait around for him to respond. She also mentioned that girls were treated differently in class, and they should be, because boys learn differently, and that by the fourth grade, they are considered as what you call a fully grown juvenile, and they need to transition into a classroom with the male that's going to guide them from a logical perspective of the left side of the brain, whereas the female teacher introduces the child from preschool, kindergarten to the right brain activity, which is more creative. The children are found to love school during that time. They participate. The parents are there participating. But by the time they roll over into the fourth grade, they are no longer operating from a right brain learning. It then turns into a left brain learning. I think it should be a whole brain learning where you bring in right brain activities and you bring in left brain activities as well. So the child is not, you switch them over really quick to there to team teach with the female. The female teacher has no business teaching a Black male child after the grade of fourth grade. She must be team teaching with that male counterpart. And that is my recommendation. You can read the book, ladies and gentlemen. There is a website set up under the wiki, and I will be sending out all of my followers and all of my subscribers an advertisement of the book cover. I've done that in the past. I'm going to be sending that out shortly so that you can read the actual book. It's going to be in an ebook format as well as in a soft cover bound format. And it's going to be very reasonable, so you can afford it. $5.99. Isn't that something? I brought the price down because I wanted everyone to read the book. We've even got it set up where if your counterpart has bought the book, she can have the book for 14 additional days to give it to you on loan, just so you can read the required reading. It's going to be required reading for every teacher who operates in a classroom working with Black boys. We have no business going in a classroom wanting to operate a classroom full of boys when we know we haven't been proficiently trained. I wasn't, and I needed to have some tutelage because I did not know everything about the black boys rearing, and it was so much that I needed to learn. So I'm saying we need the black males there to balance things off in duality, to actually work with the boy, black boy, from fourth grade up until the time he graduates. So therefore, the teacher, female teacher, is going to be integrating her teaching, but taking the lead of the male. So this will give her a chance to learn all of the cueing, the IQing of that child, because a lot of work is done with the cueing of the child and cueing the child up rather than verbally talking to the child so frequently, because we know now that the black boy will tune out a female voice really. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and we're back. Thank you so much for going on that little excursion trip with us. We're working things out here in the Oracle Divination Network. And for those of you who don't know about the background history of our room, we are Oracle Divination Network. We transitioned from Care to Read to Oracle Divination Network because we had so many unique people that were paranormal, was here leading us and beckoning us to allow these people to tell their story. So we then renamed the actual room Oracle Divination Network so that we could talk to people about their aura and about their energy, and to aid them in helping them to find solutions for their problems and looking at their mind, soul, body, and spirit. And this is an aspect of dealing with the home life, getting our home life together, and working with our children, because we know we can't go to work if we don't have anyone at home in the village to operate the village to work with our special needs children. And special needs children get neglected quite a bit. They get neglected because they can't go to any after school programs. They're bussed out of the neighborhood to go to special ed programs. They cannot connect with their peers. And because they can't go to after school programs like the Glee Club, the basketball club, the volleyball club, they are deprived. It is a form of deficiency. Every child needs to grow and develop through extracurricular activity. It is a shame. It is a disgrace that someone would be denied that opportunity. It's discriminative. And I know we're not talking about discrimination here today, but a lot of special needs advocate, and you feel that your child is being discriminated in the school system, then you must voice that file for you, but you can. And if you think this child is not being treated right, bust out of the area where you cannot get that child back and forth to school, you must have a meeting with your M team and talk about it. But it's very vital that you should understand that school districts are now being turned upside down for inadvertently, over excessively placing children in special ed, pushing mothers to put their children on Ritalin, forcing mothers to go and have their child test. Here goes the overassessment of mothers trying to apply for disability benefits. And you've got some mothers relying on that check and play crazy to get that crazy check, as they call it in the hood. Well, we got to stop it, because there's not going to be room for anybody to play around with government funds. And we got to get children in school and transition them out so they can go to somebody's 2-year technical school, and they cannot be running around with a label as disabled when in fact we know that child has all his faculties and he can learn to read. We've got mothers that are accepting the fact that their child cannot learn, and they're not pushing them to excellency. They're not pushing them to even learn how to read at grade level. That is a shame. And they're thinking, well, there's something special ed can do for my child. No, it's something that you have to do for your child, mother. Special ed doesn't have a magic wand that she can wave it over the child and now he's all better. Some things that go wrong with that child is the lifestyle at home. It has nothing to do with that child's faculties. Hold tight. It has nothing to do with that and the way that child is living. It has something to do with the mother. It has something to do with the mother who refuses to put time in with that child and helping that child to hear language and to correspond with her. Language starts with the mother cooing to the child, talking to the child, and continuing to talk to the child throughout his life so he can learn the basis of communication. A lot of children don't get talked to at home. A lot of children don't get asked, how do you feel? What is your opinion? Can you tell me something on this subject? Mothers are usually making grunt sounds, move, pull, push. They're giving commands and they're not talking to their children, so their children are having a difficult time communicating and using the orthodox English language. So when they come to school, they appear to be imbeciles. They can't communicate. Him did this. Me want to do that. See, they've got to take it from the level that is regularized code, and that's Ebonics at home. There is a different language we speak when we go outside of the house, and it's not Ebonics. It is the King's language, and that is Orthodox English. And we must teach that to our children, because if not, they will be out of place and out of order and get inadvertently diagnosed for a disability that they don't have. Mother, quit, he's disabled because he has a speech problem. Quit telling your child that he's disabled because he cannot articulate and he cannot speak or spell well or read. Quit telling him he's an imbecile. Quit calling him out of his name, because children all have to be trained to do everything. Some things they don't come out of the womb doing, and that is reading and enunciating. We have to teach them those skills. But it's very vital that mothers get involved in this particular game too. And teachers, stop sending the child off to special ed because you don't want to be bothered and you prefer not to even chastise the child. So just send them off to special ed. All of this is going to be stopped. It's going to be stopped because if you don't stop it, you're going to have an overbearing school district where you're turning children out that are ignorant and they cannot read, and you're turning them out, and there's no way they can go to a 2-year technical school to transition into a 2-year program because you haven't taught them anything. You've allowed them to sit in special ed and not be challenged. Well, we must challenge these children, and we must stop taking them out of their geographical neighborhood and sending them over to another neighborhood that is foreign. They don't want to be there. Children have to bond with their friends, and when you take their friends away, it's very difficult for them to do good in school. And we must keep self-esteem up. And if we don't keep our self-esteem up, we're going to find that our children are going to become wayward and they will drop out of school, and you won't even know why. And children can change when it comes to being around their peers. Sometimes they're in an environment where children are not like them. They must learn to get along in the world. But we certainly think some of these children are getting out of the mental institution and they're transitioning into adults. And there are laws out there now to say help those young people transition into housing where they can live in boarding houses with group homes, and they can make it on their own. A lot of them are not making enough money when they get out of school. They go to McDonald's to work for minimum wage, and they're not making enough money on part-time income, so they cannot get a home. So they have to seek out government apartments that are already discounted. So we have to do something about this whole tactic of our children failing. We have to do something. We've got to. Let's go to commercial. I was a part of the team that dealt with the corporate punishment in the school during my particular volunteer to work, and there was paddling and gnashing of teeth going on. And you better believe those children took those spankings like a man, because they did not want to go to the penal institution. Now, if we give the child a choice to take the SWAT and not go to the penal institution, his punishment. Why punish that child by putting that child in a juvenile delinquent detention that the government is taxing the people to pay for? We know that we're paying quite a bit of money. You're educating them, and then send them off to a class down the hallway, separating them from his peers, putting them in isolated areas with or to play with the computer all day, and no real official learning is going on. Well, mothers, you ought to be upset about it. You ought to be raising the roof right about now, and you should be calling in to 760-539-3247 to talk about it, because there are all kind of laws and acts that are out there that are being posed for special needs children. And some of the funds they're trying to dry up. We have to get behind, and they're not leaving the money behind. You have children that can't even participate in after school. They can't be on the swim team. They can't be on the glee team, the volleyball, and the basketball team. That's why. There are districts that will not allow them to participate because they go home in the short bus and they have to leave right after school, and they don't want to take the chance. So these children, in other words, are being denied their civil rights. They're being denied the opportunity to a full extracurricular activity that's on the agenda for parents who want to be trained. And we do training for the English as a second language best and work with so many children are misdiagnosed. We help principal. We help the principal understand she's got to do an assessment of all of her special ed departments, because there's somebody that don't belong there. I'm willing to bet you that. Somebody overlooked something and did not send the child to the speech department or do a language assessment, and they assumed that their language was a disability and they sent them to special ed. So now they're in special ed inappropriately placed, and we must go and get those children and properly assess them and have the survey done. If the child is a foreign child who's an immigrant, there should have been an assessment done the first week to properly assess what their learning deficit was, whether it's a language deficit or if it's a learning deficit. But far too often, all children are lumped together and put in special ed rather than put in ELL. ELL is a brand new category, I know, for some of you, but you can benefit from it because they also have laws and regulation. And there are some compliance laws that the district must comply to, that the principal must know about. She can be sanctioned and in non-compliance if those children are not properly assessed the first week of school. That's right, because I purposely went and learn the procedures for ELL, because all preschool kindergarten specialists are required in the state of Indiana to have some form of ELL training and endorsement. Every state should have that. Now, we're looking at Core 40. And most of the time, people say, oh, Core 40 is just over the top, it's too much. But for ELL, Core 40 is the best thing that could have ever happened to ELL, because they're going to make sure you have proficient readers, and they will be able to enunciate the English language and come out of there being able to participate with the rest of their peers. So Core 40 goes a little strong, a little hard on that English as a second language, but they come out proficient. Seems like to me we want mediocre. We don't want proficient, and we don't want to teach to mastery. You have to teach to mastery so that you got children that are misplaced in special ed. They're getting services that are not serving them well, and they're being training our teachers. Most of our teachers are not trained to do a better job of honing in skills and teacher knowing how to use the curriculum. But we cannot do that if we are so busy buying. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Thank you so much for joining us. I am your illustrious Omiinka 7, your host for this afternoon, whatever have you. And I will be talking to you about this this pipeline to prison, from school straight to the pipeline. Why has it been created, and why hasn't anything been done about it? And what can we do about it? Ladies and gentlemen, I am an advocate, and I've been working a solution out for this problem for the past 10 years, I know. But as an advocate, I've been working as an advocate for over 40 years, but I've actually produced a book and research on the African American males and the effect that females have on them in the school system. And why do you suspect that I chose the females? It's because we are 80% of the teachers in the building, and there are not any men there, but we need men to come in and start teaching our boys, our Black males in particular, and boys in general, their fourth grade lessons, starting from fourth grade all the way up until graduation. We cannot keep putting a right brain lesson plan on these boys when their fourth grade. It's time to get logical. It's time to get whole brain learning with them. And I am on the concept of whole brain learning. Don't exclude right brain or left brain, but whole brain. So you create an analytical child who can become endorsed with the necessary skills for science, technology, engineering, and math so that they can solve problems of the world. We need problem solvers, and we are training children for the wrong jobs. Anything that has been outdated, we need to pull it out of the curriculum and train them for the STEMS program when we know we're going to have a high technology demand and a bioscience demand. We should be training the children in science and math and focusing in on very little electives because they need to get their foundations down repetitiously to mastery. So if they're going to be engineers, they certainly must have problem-solving games to play and language word games that will allow them to use their problem-solving skill. We cannot do that when we're giving them ditto sheets that are outdated, and we're talking about last year's curriculum when they're on to something brand new on the internet. And integrate your curriculum with your tools that are on YouTube and have up-to-date libraries where they can access libraries across the country. We cannot stress the urgency to train our teachers to be high-tech teachers, have the curriculum, have technology across the curriculum. And with special needs children, they need to have tools that are adaptive tools that they can use. If they are children who have missing limbs, who cannot use their phalanges, these tools must be made, and somebody has to create them. And nobody's creating them now, so a large number of special needs children are going without these tools to help them manipulate a computer. It's very vital that we should understand that we must make our schools relevant. And when your school is irrelevant because you've taught your children's last year's lesson and it's outdated, you must bring things up to date and be current with the classroom teaching. That's why you need a curriculum specialist there to come in and to guide the teacher and to role play for the teacher. Most teachers put the curriculum in a corner and they don't even their educational maps for the month to deal with core 40. Any administrator that walks in that class at any given time for a third grader should all be teaching the same thing on that particular map. At least the content of information should be the same. The methodology may change. But if they're not doing that, they can be written up for not following the Core 40 plan. So it's very vital that we understand that this Core 40 was implemented to better our schools. And a lot of people are frowning upon it because they don't want to go through the necessary work of learning the curriculum. But you should have been working from the curriculum in the first place. But you have too many people that deviate from the curriculum and they do their own thing and they fail to teach handwriting. They'll say, oh, it's not needed. So since when did we gain an extra modality that we taught ourselves to do handwriting? You're supposed to teach handwriting on a regular basis to preschoolers in kindergarten. And phonetics, phonemic awareness. They must learn the encoding and outcoding, the slide rule. They must learn the murmur diphthongs. They must learn all of the language when it comes to English. Because if they don't know how to unlock a word, then they won't have a comprehension of the word. They may be just calling words and coughing up the words, but they don't have time to comprehend because they're too busy breaking down the word and using encoding and outcoding. It's deviate from the pipeline, well, the school to pipeline. We want to do everything we can to avoid from assessing a child inappropriately, placing him in special ed when we know he has a language barrier. We give him the speech, give him the test or assessment for speech therapy, get him in speech therapy, let the speech therapist help us in making a proper diagnosis. But we must appeal to the principals. Principals, we're coming to address your issue of the overabundant children being inappropriately placed in special ed. That is your baby. You're supposed to see to it that they're not over assessing children of African American descent and placing them in special ed just because they have a language barrier. There are places in your district that will help the English as a second language, a separate department that gets state funding to address that. We must take the pressure off of special ed and put that child back in the appropriate learning. They call it sheltered learning. They will learn their culture and they will learn language and they will learn how to socialize. This is why so many of our children don't know how to socialize. No one is demonstrating for them. In the English as a second language, they will learn to socialize. It will cut down on the communication problem, cut down on the fight second language. So when they get ready to transition back to the classroom, they're transitioning back with some skills of how to conduct themselves and how to act. And they're not coming in acting like a hoodlum, ready to fight every time somebody look at them the wrong way. We got to realize we need our socialization back in the classroom. We need our children to have character skills. We need to also have our children in middle school back into the home economics department to learn nurturing skills, to learn parenting skills. We've taken the best part of school and thrown it out the window, all in the name of electives. And all these electives that we're bringing are not addressing the real problem of that child. So we've got to do an overhaul of working with our schools principals, and we've got to go and get those special ed children and get their files and reassess them. And anybody that could be saved and recuperated and brought back into the classroom after being remediated, we graft them back in. And anybody that appear not to have a learning disability but a language barrier, we place them in the proper classroom so they can get that language work they need. And remember, English is not a Black child's first language. Ebonics is the first language for a Black child. That's right. It's a recognized, regularized code by every linguistic, and they're now claiming that it is a language. So they don't learn English first. They learn Ebonics first because they speak that in the home and it's a regularized code. So they come to school to learn English. And their parents are thinking you're going to teach them English, but you thought that the parents was already using English at home, but some of them aren't. So you can't assume that. You must go and teach that child Orthodox English because they haven't had it at home. Now, that's a little known news that you didn't know, teachers. For those Caucasian teachers, you probably assume that every child that is not an immigrant, that they've learned how to speak English. But look at how many decades the African Americans may have, been over here from their ancestors, and they still are speaking broken English. That tells you that they're not communicating with the King's language. And they've been speaking broken language in their household, and more of the Southerners are really speaking it. So they don't enunciate, and they sometimes have vowel problems. All of that has to be taken care of. And we cannot assume that they are coming here with English as a first language. English is a second language. So start in on making them a bilingual, and if needed be, teach them a foreign language, which will help them learn English much faster. But we've got to address this. We can no longer keep putting our boys in the line of fire so that they are now in the juvenile delinquent because it's some stupid thing they were fighting and you charged them. Somebody got hurt, so now they have felonies on them at the age of 16, 17. We got to stop that. Those children can be saved. We're not throwing children away, and we're not putting them in a penal institution so they can press license plates and do and make costly things at a low price when we're utilizing them to work for free. We've got to realize we see what's happening. We know what's happening. And it's no mystery to us. All Black men are not bad. And Black women, you've got to start saying something because your Black boys will grow up to be Black men. You've got to start going to the school and saying, hey, where's my handbook? What are my rights? What rights do my child have? And what services are you demanded to give my child? And do I have to transfer my son out of this neighborhood to get the services? How far do I have to travel? And is there a stipulation on the limitation of my distance that I have to travel to get my son to this other school? And could your child be displaced because now they're shifting the Black children out of the mainstream with the white children, so they want the child to go downstairs in the basement, through the trees, through the backyard, in order to get this specialized training that he's not getting. And that's a shame. We're claiming that they're getting such specialized training, and then they come out with a certificate that only says completion. It does not say diploma. It does not say core 40. Mothers, you at the roof at these people telling you they're going to keep your child. No, you got to place in society that has no diploma and cannot go and enroll in the military, nor can he go and enroll in college with that for 40 parents. You must put your children back, graduate with a legitimate diploma. Stop letting your children graduate with a piece of paper. And if you do, I know you're the idiot, because I'm telling you now that these children in special ed are not coming out with a diploma, but a certificate of completion instead. Who would listen? Well, it's unfair. That's something that we're going to tolerate because we know we fought for those rights during the civil rights movement. But parents, you first have got to exercise your rights and know your rights. I can't tell you. You can go and read up on your rights, get the handbook. I am not an attorney. I will not be your advisor. And if you need an attorney, I suggest you go seek an attorney to get your child back in school and let the attorney make the decision on your case. Now, there are some advocates that the school district have listed that they can give you the names of that are low cost advocates that will represent your case. You definitely need to ask the principal about that. And principal, get your M team together so you can formalize your ELL team. That's right. We have brand new books that we can distribute to you, back to those children that are inappropriately placed in special ed, and how to do the proper assessment and get those children in the proper venue, and how to train your teachers not to just write these children off and send them to special ed. And look at the possibility of bringing in your special ed teacher in the classroom to assess all the children, so special needs children are not singled out and are made to feel indifferent. It's very vital that we should get a handle of this because we are letting far too much go by, and our children are becoming an actual fugitive who are getting displaced and leaving the community without anybody challenging the system to say, did that child get suspended at school? Let's bring corporate punishment back. If Johnny knows he's going to get spanked, he won't fight at school. But if Johnny knows nothing's going to happen to him, he's shocked that somebody's going to put him in jail. Now he's being ticketed and he's been stuck with a felony for striking someone. And now he's got a record. We can avoid that, parent. We can avoid that, administrator. And we got principals that got to do a better job of what's going on in their building. I don't fault all the teachers because the principal is ultimately going to catch it for any inadequacy their teacher or his teacher doesn't have. So the buck stops with the principal. So I'm approaching the principal saying, do you want an assessment and do you want a team to come in to get your staff together so that you can alleviate all that excess weight in special ed and get those children back in the mainstream where they should be and get some help from an outside agency? Now, Nabi put together an excellent workbook that will help all you principals, and also a workbook that will help you to create your after school program, because you need to start putting special ed back into these after school programs, and they need to be culturally oriented, preferably English as a second language ready. You can put your special needs children right in that English as a second language and then begin to teach them Orthodox English, and they can get that toolage they need and catch up over the summer where they're going after school for the next 3 months. Because when they get pulled out of the mainstream and then they're put in these special classroom, it's very hard to catch them up because they're lacking in their science, they're lacking in their math, because they're too busy learning how to socialize, which is good. They need that. But they also need their math and science because they have to meet the criteria of the Core 40. Now, I want to say to some of you mothers, you are experts. You have the skills, you have everything what it takes to read the laws and interpret the laws. Don't be afraid to advocate for your child. Don't be afraid to go out front and be a self-advocate. And don't expect yourself. It's very vital that we children who might have not started the fight or a scuffle or a fight. We can change that. We can make things better, and we can allow our children to grow up in their own neighborhood. We need to stop taking them out of our neighborhoods, shipping them to some school that we claim is going to be better, and it comes out worse. Now they're suspended, now they're expelled, now they're sent to juvenile delinquent, and now they're on the school to pipeline route. And we got to stop that, because this is a direct pipeline to get our boys into the prison institution, and some girls that don't realize they shouldn't be fighting. If we brought back corporal punishment, and if you don't want your child whipped by the principal, you come into the building and whip them. This is how it used to be. Who got rid of all those laws? We need to lobby for those laws. We need to beg for those laws. We were better children when they had corporate punishment. Nobody died from a butt whooping. Nobody went home ill because they got a butt whooping. They went home a better child, a reproved child. Because if you're not going to use scriptures to reprove a child, what are you going to use to deal with a wayward child? You can't just keep locking them up, giving them rations for food. You can't keep treating them like an animal, and you won't be able to hold some of these men too much longer. You're going to have to release them. And locking up somebody is not the way. I know over in Europe, they locked a lot of women up with chastity belts on and put them in castles. What is with this locking up someone in cages? They become like an animal. And we are not trying to put non-criminals in prison. We've got enough criminals to deal with, but those that don't need to be there, who have not committed heinous crimes, we should not be following suit with opening up the prison so quickly for these young boys who have not developed their manhood. And we should look at another system that can be in the school system, make use of that school system, hold a hearing before that child goes and get carted off to any prison. Have the hearing right there in the school, and not do a due process hearing right there. Don't send that child through the juvenile delinquent system. Let him stay right there in the school and hold an M-team meeting and determine if he should be brought back into the school. And if so, under what condition. But don't have that child carted off to prison, because that is the next step to the pipeline. And that's what is happening with our Black children. And we cannot keep giving them over to the system. And we have to say enough is enough. And we have to say special ed is not working. It's not working for the general population. And those boys who are getting special ed, they're being conditioned. And it's sort of like that they did what they did with the Native Americans. They condition them. It's a miseducation because they know that they're not ready for the real world. And when they go out there and they find that they cannot measure up, they're angry. And then they have gnashing of teeth. And then they're physical. Then they want to fight. And they should be angry. But you created this anger in the child because you're giving them an inappropriate education. And parent, you should be now. It's money to graduate, and then you last minute to find out Johnny's not going to graduate. Then get online courses he needs so he can complete graduation and he can come out of diploma and not some have got to understand everything white because they're teaching their children in a white building. We want to have our Johnny over there learning who's black. He can learn something. No, your Johnny has to be happy and socialize where he's at. And he has to have heed and do much better because he's not segregated and separated from his classmates. Children need socialization. You cannot take extracurricular activity away from these handicapped children. It's a form of discrimination. And that is what's currently been happening. And we've got to look into this thing and say, what must we do to get behind these laws and these bills so that we can get more homes that are group homes for our high school graduates who are transitioning out of special ed. Some of them don't feel they want to go to college, but they want to be upright, law-abiding citizens and get a job. Then help them to transition from school to home or from school to work. But don't just let them drop through the cracks when they get out of special ed. They're displaced and they're at McDonald's the rest of their life and they're home with their mama. It's got to change. And we've got to find more housing for these young men who are adults that can live in group homes and have a supervision around the clock. But we've got a terrible situation because Black boys are being diagnosed under special ed more frequently than any other race of people. So we have more Black boys being suspended in the high school, public schools, more Black boys having a dropout rate higher than anybody else, and more Black boys being diagnosed with learning disability. Why is this? Is there a bad germ of some kind that we think the Black boy has? So we assume they should be in special ed. We assume they should be in prison. Well, we've got to make some changes and we've got to make them fast because parents, you are the next best teacher. Step up your game. Go to your schools, inquire about the services they have for assessments of your children who are in special ed. Ask if the ELL teacher can assess the child. Ask if the ELL teacher can tell you if the child has any phonics problem, a learning problem, or a reading problem. That way you know exactly what the child needs and you just don't have them in special ed going through the motion. But we're going to make some changes around here and they're going to be soon. Hold tight. We're going to make some changes around here and they're going to be soon. Did you hear what I said? They're going to be soon. All right now. I hope you got my drift because I am serious. We are going to have to make some changes in the school system. We're going to have to get these advocates' names up front on that desk as you come into the office so they're available to the parent. We're going to have to stop pushing these Black boys through the cracks for them to drop out. They're not dropping out because they want to, Mom. They're being pushed out. And we cannot have these Black boys being pushed out of this school system. We cannot have them sitting at home doing nothing. And we cannot say that it's okay for them to be suspended. It is not go to somebody's job and learn a trade. You cannot have them learning a trade if they are sitting that the public schools have just failed our children. They just walk away. Don't just walk away. Go over there and try to help them. Volunteer. Talk to the principal and ask if you can go into the special ed room, and then you do an assessment and tell me what you think. Find out some things that you can do to help education, to help get those children mainstream back into the classroom. But we certainly can't just give up and throw up our hands. Make me want to holler and throw up both my hands. No, you can't do that. It is not going to happen. Hold tight.
90 seconds.
Thank you for joining us back here in the Oracle Divination Network. You got Omi Inca 7 live, and our phone lines are open, and our number is 760-539-3247. If you'd like to call in with your questions and answers, we are here to serve you, and we are Representation Inc. It is a special, unique center, ladies and gentlemen, as I told, and I'm having a little trouble here with paper. It is a non-for-profit organization, unique non-for-profit firm, watchdog, and publishing house dedicated to speaking up for unrepresented, those who can't speak for themselves. And this organization has been doing disability paperwork for clients, taking on adults as well as children, aiding those elderly people who are filing for disability, assisting them, and also providing materials for training. They provide in-house catalogs and materials for training, and they're a law firm, so they can represent someone. They are an actual bona fide law firm. However, they do not offer advice in their website. You must actually set aside some time to go in and secure the lawyer and pay the fee that is necessary, but they will not give advice over the internet. And I'm saying that I am not an attorney, and I do not offer you any consultation or advising. And if you are in need of some representation, I go and secure you an attorney, and make sure when you secure that attorney that he can answer all the questions that you have and can assist you. Because parent, if your children are out of school and expelled and suspended, you definitely need to see about getting an attorney to get your child back into school. And if your child has a learning disability, you need to have him assessed or her assessed. And you need to make sure that they have not been inappropriately placed in special ed for a learning disability that they don't have. And instead, they may have a language barrier that can be helped. And they can get that services right there in the district if they are servicing LELL. And sometimes a speech therapist can intervene to help as well. Most African Americans have a language barrier. It's not all learning deficit. And just because not all learning disabled, and some of them have not been taught the language and they have not been conversing with mother. And so they haven't heard the English language. So therefore, they come to school with 5,000 less words than the average Caucasian child. That doesn't, they don't learn the same words in the home that the Caucasian learn. They learn other words. So they're not devoid of words. They just don't learn the words that the Orthodox English teach. But that English is not the first language for an African American child. And you can bank on that because I talked to a linguistic and he said that Ebonics is the first language of the African child. So therefore, when it becomes a language, so Ebonics actually has become a language, and most black linguistics know this. There are some Caucasians who might not realize that Ebonics is a language and might use it as some type of offshore language and don't realize that that's what the African American child is speaking when they come to school. So therefore, they are not under the English language recommendation. They need to be taught English language. So therefore, that's why you have a hard time trying to decipher whether to put them in special ed because they're not articulating. They have not been taught English language, and most of their parents speak Ebonics sometimes in the home as well. And we must get a grip on that and must understand that if we don't properly identify that, keep saying that it is a disability, then we're going to have children that are not going to be properly assessed. And we don't want that to happen. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to give out that phone line again for the last minute people, 760-539-3247. Jot it down in your book. Tell a friend about me, ladies and gentlemen. Have them come and listen to me. I'm on periodically here. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and I will see you tomorrow at 3:30.